Okay, so have you ever felt like you're on that treadmill, you know,
Uh-huh.
working so hard, but you're not really getting anywhere?
Yeah.
You're kind of just stuck in the same spot. Or maybe even like falling behind a little bit. Like
Yeah.
you go to the grocery store and you're like, wait, I got like 3 things. Why is this so much?
Right.
Or you go to fill up your gas tank and you're like, what is going on?
It never stops.
And then rent comes around and it's like,
Yeah.
bam, another huge chunk of your paycheck gone.
Yep.
It's like there's a leak in your bank account and you can't figure out where all your money is going.
Well, you're definitely not alone in feeling that way.
Right.
That's a really common experience these days, and it's not just in your head.
Yeah.
What you're describing is probably the effect of inflation.
Inflation.
Yeah, in the simplest terms, inflation is when prices for pretty much everything just keep going up over time.
Okay.
So that means every dollar you have just doesn't buy as much as it used to.
Right. Yeah. It's like your money is on a diet that you didn't sign up for. And I think a lot of people might hear inflation and just kind of brush it off like, oh, yeah, prices go up. That's just how things work.
Right.
But I think that's a big mistake
I agree.
because ignoring inflation is like ignoring a tiny crack in your windshield.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
It might seem like a small thing at first, but if you don't fix it, it can turn into a huge problem down the road.
Absolutely.
And in this case, that problem is your financial well-being.
Because inflation is silently eating away at your hard-earned cash.
Yep. And the value of your savings.
If you don't acknowledge it and take steps to counter it, you're basically losing money without realizing it.
So today we really want to take a deep dive into how inflation is impacting your finances.
Yeah, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So what makes inflation so tricky is that it's this sneaky, gradual thing. It's not like prices suddenly double overnight. It's this slow, steady climb, it's like the frog in the boiling water analogy.
I was just thinking that.
You know, each little increase doesn't seem like a big deal on its own, but before you know it, the water is scorching hot.
Yeah, and you're like, how did I get here?
Exactly. Remember a few years ago when you could just grab a coffee and a pastry without thinking twice?
Oh, yeah, those were the days.
Now it feels like a luxury.
A mini splurge, for sure.
And what's so crazy is how those little price increases on everyday things really add up over time.
It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Right.
I mean, think about your monthly budgets.
Yeah.
Food, transportation, housing.
The big ones.
Yeah, the essentials, and they're all affected by inflation.
They are.
As things get more expensive, the same amount of money just doesn't cover as much anymore.
Right. It's like your budget is constantly shrinking even if your income hasn't changed.
Exactly. It's a real squeeze.
And it's not just about the cost of things today. What really gets me is the impact on our savings.
Oh, yeah.
Like you work hard,
Yeah.
you diligently put money away, thinking you're being responsible.
Right, doing the right thing.
But if the interest you're earning on that savings is less than the rate of inflation, your savings are actually losing value.
That's a really important point.
The number in your bank account might be going up a little bit, but what you can buy with that money is actually going down.
Yeah, and it's this key difference between nominal value and real value.
Okay, break that down for me.
So let's say you've got $100 in a savings account earning 1% interest.
Okay.
After a year, you'll have $101. Sounds good, right?
A whole extra dollar.
But let's say inflation is running at 4% that same year.
Okay.
That means everything costs 4% more than it did last year.
Right.
So even though you have $101 now, it can't buy you as much as the $100 you had last year.
So even though you technically gained a dollar, you actually lost buying power.
Exactly. It's like your savings are on a diet without your permission, constantly losing their ability to buy the things you need.
It's like you're running just to stay in place.
Yep. And it can feel really discouraging.
It does. It feels like you have to be so careful with every purchase now. Constantly looking for deals. Maybe switching to cheaper brands.
Right.
And really thinking twice about anything that isn't absolutely necessary.
I definitely feel that.
It's like you need a magnifying glass to track every penny.
And honestly, that constant pressure to cut back can be exhausting.
Absolutely. It takes a toll on your well-being.
It does.
It makes you realize that inflation isn't just this abstract concept.
Right.
It's a real force that affects your daily life.
It shapes how you spend your money.
Exactly.
And it can create a feeling of scarcity even if you're technically making the same amount of money.
So knowing that inflation is this constant thing nibbling away at our finances, what can we actually do about it?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because just accepting it doesn't feel like a good plan.
Not at all.
One thing I've been thinking about is making my money work harder for me.
Okay, how do you mean?
Well, instead of just letting it sit in a savings account that might not even keep up with inflation, I've been trying to learn more about investments that have the potential for higher growth over time.
Yeah, that's a really smart move.
You think so?
Yeah, because the goal is to shift your focus from just saving to actually growing your wealth
Okay.
at a rate that outpaces inflation. And historically, investing in a diversified portfolio has been one way to do that.
Diversified portfolio.
Yeah, so instead of putting all your eggs in one basket, you spread your investments across a variety of different assets,
Right.
like stocks, bonds, real estate, things like that.
So you're not relying on just one thing to do well.
Exactly. It helps manage risk and gives you the potential for returns that beat inflation in the long run.
And speaking of real estate, I've also heard that can be a good hedge against inflation.
Yeah, that's true. Historically, property values and rental income tend to go up along with inflation.
Interesting.
So it can be a way to protect your money, but it's important to remember that real estate is a big investment.
Yeah.
It comes with its own complexities like property taxes, maintenance costs, and it's not always easy to quickly sell if you need cash fast.
So not a quick fix.
Right. Not a one-size-fits-all solution, but definitely something to consider.
And then on a more personal level, something I've been trying to do is be more mindful of my spending habits.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Just trying to see where I can cut back on unnecessary expenses
Makes sense.
so I can free up more money to save or invest.
Yeah, exactly.
Like maybe those subscription services I never use, or
Yeah.
cutting back on eating out so much.
It's all about being intentional with your money,
Right.
deciding where you want it to go, and prioritizing the things that bring you value.
So it sounds like the key takeaway here is that inflation is a real and constant factor
Absolutely.
that's eroding the buying power of our money over time.
Impacting everything from our daily expenses to the value of our savings.
And the best way to deal with it is to be mindful of our spending
Yes.
and to explore investment options that can help our wealth grow faster than inflation.
Like diversified investment funds or potentially real estate,
Right.
depending on your individual situation and goals.
So for someone listening right now, what are a couple of concrete steps they can take to start tackling this?
Okay, so first I'd say take a good look at where your money has been going lately.
Okay.
Check your bank statements, credit card bills, or use a budgeting app to really see your spending patterns.
That makes sense.
Sometimes just seeing it all laid out can be eye-opening.
It can be.
Second, compare the interest rate you're earning on your savings accounts to how much you feel prices have gone up.
Easy enough?
If there's a big difference, that's a sign your savings are probably losing value due to inflation.
Gotcha.
And third, if you're not already familiar with investing, I'd encourage you to spend some time researching index funds.
Index funds.
Yeah, there are tons of resources online that explain them in simple terms.
Cool.
Even a basic understanding can open up new options for protecting your money from inflation.
So now that we all know a little bit more about how inflation can affect our financial well-being, what's one small step you can commit to taking this week to start addressing it?
I love that.
Share your thoughts. Let's keep the conversation going, because the more we talk about this stuff, the better equipped we are to navigate the financial world.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in to Wait, Can I Afford That?
See ya.